Ah, yes, Klaus. Welcome back. How did you enjoy your walking tour of our sleepy little farming town or community, as it were? Yes, yes. Oh, you have some historic questions. Well, as the curator of the local museum, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. Now, as you already know, this farming town was founded by Thomas Jefferson just before he became President of the United States. Yes, yes, our farming town has seen some pretty significant historic events over the, well, over the many, many decades that it has been around, and as you can see, is still flourishing. Yes. I mean, there have been a few dark moments as well, but I'd say the good outweighs the bad. hmm hmm Well, I'm a little surprised that a reporter such as yourself from Germany chose to come here. Now, you mentioned that your newspaper is a rather small, localized newspaper in a very rural part of Germany. Now, is that correct? Oh, yes, yes. Well, as you know, farming towns, rural centers make sense. But I have a feeling you came here specifically to ask me something. Please, go ahead. Mm-hmm, 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 mm-hmm. Well, I'll be honest with you, my German friend. That is not what I was expecting. I thought you wanted to speak with us, the town officials and myself, about the visit from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. that we had. Yes, he did stop by our community, and unfortunately, well, half of the residents were very friendly towards him, and the other half, um, well, let's just say it was a different time back then. I mean, there were no open threats. There were no crosses being burned outside of his motel room. But I think Dr. King got the impression that it would be best for him to make his speech at the community center and then move on to the next town. Like I said, not everything that is part of our history is an excellent one. Although the fact that no actual violence broke out, I think that's rather important, wouldn't you say? But yes, so that's not what you actually wanted to speak about. And, well, I'll be honest with you, my German friend. Normally, I would just deny it. I would play it off as something rather silly, and I would politely ask you to leave. But quite frankly, I'm about to retire in a few months, and there's not a lot of us left who remember what took place. So, first of all, the rumors are true. Yes, everything you've heard is true. I'm not sure where you got all of your information from. Apparently, a bit more of it leaked out than we had any clue actually did, if I'm being honest. And I will be honest with you, my German friend. How did it happen? Well, back in the 1970s, an individual who had moved into town was accused of doing something very terrible and very inappropriate with a child. And that's all I will say regarding that. This individual who had recently moved into our town, well, he was brutally beaten by many of the locals. Well, not many of them. I guess as a storyteller I do tend to exaggerate. But quite a few of the men beat him quite badly. And apparently the local sheriff showed up and stopped them from killing him because he had received some information that the woman who accused this man of what he had done, well, she was lying. She figured she would accuse him. For some odd reason, she believed that he had a great deal of money, and she figured that if she accused him, she could get him to pay her off, and then she would say that it was a horrible, unfortunate mistake. Well, she didn't expect a few of the townspeople, the men, to react as quickly as they had. He spent a long time recuperating at the hospital. And, well, I know for a fact that the reason why he kept his mouth shut about the men who had beaten him is because he didn't know who they were. But many in town believed he had done it because, well, because he didn't want them arrested or punished for having made an honest mistake. But I know better. He just didn't know who they were. He kept mostly to himself. He wanted to be left alone. He wasn't a farmer. He wasn't a farmhand. He wasn't a manager. He wasn't anyone. He was just someone who came to our slow-paced, sleepy little town and, well, wanted to be left alone. I can respect that. I believe he worked in the next town over. But shortly after, he finally recovered after spending months in the hospital. He was released, and it turned out that he was released on his birthday. Yes, my German friend, yes. And apparently he had fully recuperated, and the nursing staff whom he had gotten close to had mentioned that all he wanted was a nice cake on his birthday. They had planned on getting him one, but they got the date mixed up. So he was released from the hospital in the morning of his birthday. They thought his birthday would be the next day, and they were surprised that he was released. But, yeah, and other people as well. Apparently he had gone to the local bakery, and he had asked if they could make him a cake. And, well, around here, if you want a good cake, you pretty much have to travel 50 miles out of your way to a bakery that specializes in cakes. Because, well, our small bakery specializes in bread. That's what we need. We need bread. There are obviously several women who know how to cook, who know how to bake. This is an old-fashioned town after all. But apparently he didn't know any of them well enough to ask any of them to bake him a cake. And so that afternoon he got in his car and he was getting ready to drive out of his way just to get himself a cake, bring it back to his apartment. I mean, it was his birthday. No one really knew him that well. And he just really wanted a cake. And, well, there was the incident with the school bus. The horrible storm that rolled through unexpectedly. The school bus veered off the bridge into the water, and he just happened to approach the bridge when it happened. According to the very few eyewitnesses, he took off his shoes, dove in, and, well, some of the children couldn't swim, some of them could. He went to the ones who couldn't swim. He started grabbing them, pulling them up on the shore. The bystanders who were standing there admitted sheepishly that they couldn't swim. So he told them to keep an eye on the kids, and he just kept diving in and bringing out more kids, and, well, eventually the bus driver, he managed to make it out, but the bus driver, he didn't dive in to save any kids. And the handful of adults on the bank of the river, they couldn't swim. The bus driver could, but he chose not to. The children who could swim, they made it onto the banks of the river. The ones who couldn't, he kept diving back in and just hauling them out. Apparently, he wasn't a very strong swimmer himself, but he somehow found the strength and courage, and he helped them out. And when they had gotten the very last child to safety, he sat down on the banks of the river to catch his breath. He leaned forward and, well, apparently he expired. According to the coroner's report, he had a massive and instant heart attack. Perhaps the fact that he was exhausted is why he didn't outwardly show any signs of having a heart attack. He died right there on the shore. The last thing he said was to the bus driver who came to check on him, ironically. He said, "All I wanted was my birthday cake." And then he was gone. Since then, Every year, on the date of his birthday, a cake is sent to his apartment, a birthday cake. No one has lived in that apartment since, and no one ever will. Yes, it's haunted. Every year, on the date of his birthday, a birthday cake is prepared. The door is unlocked. The landlord takes the cake into the apartment, sets it on the table, and ironically, that table since the early 1970s in that apartment is spotless. It shouldn't be, but it is. He places it on the table, wishes his deceased tenant a happy birthday, lights the candles, and walks out. And every year that has happened, we have had wonderful, wonderful crops. We haven't had any major storms, except on 3 occasions, because there have been times when people forgot or they didn't believe, and so no cake was left. The first time it happened, a major storm came by. It washed away the bridge, absolutely destroyed it, and a good number of our crops. Several years afterwards, we ended up with a new resident who was a skeptic, but they claimed, "Oh, I want to participate. Let me bake the birthday cake." They never baked it. And the landlord went to their house, knocked on the door, and they just refused to open it. So, that year, most of our crops failed. A storm came by, one of the worst we've had since this town was founded, wiped away our crops. We had to get help from the federal government and FEMA. It was terrible. The last time, well, the landlord had expired, and the apartment complex was inherited by his son. His son decided to play a little prank. Why waste good cake and candles? So he made a fake one out of paper mache and left it there. Well, the very next day, every single fire hydrant in town exploded. Water gushing everywhere. It was terrible. When the townspeople found out what this young man had done with his paper mache birthday cake, oh, my German friend, let me tell you, all of us banded together. We tarred and feathered him and ran him out of town on a rail. Yes, we did. Absolutely. Because we had learned our lesson. This specter, this ghost, this man, he was a hero. And to disrespect him in such a manner, especially after the brutal beating he had taken and yet saved so many of our school kids, Oh no, that is not something we would tolerate. And so ever since then, we have taken steps to make sure that such nonsense never happens again. Every year, that birthday cake is placed on that table. And every year, the town wishes him a happy birthday. And every year, we have a bumper crop. More crops than we know what to do with. Prosperity. More than any of the neighboring towns. That's the way it is, my German friend. Feel free to print that in your small German rural newspaper. I doubt everyone will believe it, but it's the truth. Yes. Happy birthday, or else.